Hidden Hotels along Washington Avenue, Minneapolis, Minnesota, 1900 to 1905, Part 3. The Valhalla Hotel, 105 South Washington Avenue. After a spate of publicized arrests at the Valhalla Hotel, a municipal court judge expressed his displeasure at the hotel's owner. He fined the hotel proprietor $50 for running a call girl service. He also fined the hotel owner's daughter $10 for being one of the call girls working at her father's hotel. The judge let him know that any further incidents would result in his imprisonment in the workhouse. The Crawford Hotel, 106 South Washington Avenue. The Crawford Hotel was located on the upper floors of a multi-purpose building. The Gong Chinese restaurant was located on the first floor, and the Winkley Artificial Limb Company was located on the second floor. The 30 guests were accommodated above. One night, one of the guests dropped a pipe, and the pipe caught fire and set the building ablaze. The proprietor of the hotel, Mrs. Crawford, went from room to room in order to wake up her sleeping guests so they could escape. Due to her vigilance, the guests were all saved from the fire. None of her guests were harmed by the fire, but she sustained $500 in property loss to her hotel floors. The Harvard Hotel was known as one of the worst fire traps in all of downtown Minneapolis. When the fire erupted through 3 stories of the Harvard Hotel, the people died like rats in a cage. This disaster was considered one of the worst fires in Minneapolis history. The loss of 8 lives was caused by the spontaneous combustion of a large kerosene fuel tank. The explosion sent up a gigantic cloud of smoke and toxic fumes throughout the hotel, making it technically impossible for the firemen to reach the guests in the upper floors. Many of the guests went unconscious as they struggled to get their way to safety in the hallways of the hotel. People on the street could hear the hotel guests screaming as they battled for their lives. For instance, a pair of guests could be seen trying to open a 3rd-floor window that sent smashed glass cascading onto the pavement below. Their desperate effort to get oxygen was for nothing, and they suffocated. Another guest jumped from the 3rd floor. The wire he grabbed during his descent cut his hands, but it helped to break his fall as he smashed through a skylight. He was helped by a policeman and taken to a hospital. Harvard Hotel had some fire escapes. However, the current fire codes required a fire escape being accessible in only a few rooms on each floor. Not everyone had equal access to the fire escapes. This was the case for many of the cheap hotels in the downtown area. But even with the fire escapes there, some guests delayed getting out of the hotel because they were not properly dressed to go out in public. Thousands and thousands of curiosity seekers flocked to the fire site, and they were dissatisfied that they could only see broken windows and not much more. They wanted to get a good look at the 8 guests who died from choking to death. Hundreds of people lined up at the morgue to see the dead bodies of the choked guests lying there on the slabs or coffin tops. The morgue director had to stop parents from bringing in their kids to look at the dead bodies. The Warwick Hotel, 206 South Washington Avenue. The Warwick Hotel caught fire on February 27, 1901. When the fire department arrived, they were hampered by a shortage of water. After they extinguished the fire, the firemen went down into the cellar to figure out what happened with the water levels. When they were down there, they found that there was a drunken man swimming around in the basement. They pulled him out and put him in a cell. A lot of people came out to see the fire, and another drunkard was arrested on the fire site as well. He somehow got a hold of a fireman's uniform and started participating in the firefighting. He was only punished with a reprimand and not put in jail. Despite the bitterly cold weather and the fire's disruption to streetcar lines, the glow of the intense blaze drew huge crowds. Spectators stood for hours watching the public spectacle. The fire was so popular that saloons and businesses nearby did a booming business on account of it. After the excitement, many people had a very cold trip back home after the frozen fire hoses burst, drenching them and turning them into ice statuary. Mankato Hotel, 212.5 South Washington Avenue. When the Mankato Hotel staff found an unconscious man sprawled out in front of their hotel, they figured he was just another drunk who had passed out on their property. However, it turned out that he was dead. There were a number of questionable resorts around the Mankato House Hotel. Police had a hard time figuring out which bar he came from and where the muddy corpse was dragged. The coroner ruled that it was a blunt instrument that hit the man's left cheek with enough force to fracture his skull. Although there were $65 in one of the dead man's pockets, there was no identification on his body. Nobody knew who he was. Investigators surmised that he was a stranger in town who was lured into the alley and beaten to death by some new acquaintances he had befriended in Minneapolis. The Winona Hotel, 219 South Washington Avenue. A woodcrafter staying at the Winona Hotel discovered that taking home work can kill you. The guest worked in a cabinet-making factory. He stole a bottle of wood alcohol from his employer. He drank the stolen wood alcohol in his hotel room. By the end of the day, the drink had killed him. This presentation gives only a small sample of the hundreds of lurid hotel stories appearing in my 2 books. Both of them are available on Amazon.com. Please subscribe to my Hidden Stories YouTube channel. Many more stories are to come. My website, www.luridhistory.com, indexes all the street presentations. You never know if you might be passing right by one of those stories while you're walking downtown.